Subtracting fractions. Fractions are numbers too. They just look a little different since they represent part of a whole. Important facts to remember when subtracting fractions. Do not subtract the denominators, ever. Do not subtract fractions with unlike denominators, ever. Make sure you are not subtracting a larger number from a smaller number, just like in regular subtraction. You can't take 5 away from 3. And finally, make sure the answer is in simplest form, always. All right, so let's start by subtracting fractions with like denominators. So in this case, you simply subtract the numerators. So here you see 2/4 minus 1/4 equals, and then I've just set it up the same way I did when we were adding fractions. I showed you the subtraction problem that we're really solving when we're subtracting fractions. 2 minus 1, so we're subtracting the numerators. 2 minus 1 equals 1, and our denominator stayed the same throughout. It was always 4. So with subtraction, you must always check to see if your first numerator is greater than your second numerator. Just as you can see, our 2 is greater than 1. Just like in subtraction of whole numbers, you cannot subtract a larger number from a smaller number. It's just like we know, I can't say 1 minus 2. I can't take 2 cookies off a plate if there's only 1 cookie left. Finally, is 1/4 in simplest form? It sure is. So you have solved the equation. Or you're going to have this. 5/8 minus 1/8. So 5 minus 1 is 4. So the answer is 4/8. Is 4/8 in simplest form? No. But what number can you divide both 4 and 8 by evenly? Well, let's look down here. 4 can be divided by 4, and that equals 1. 8 can also be divided by 4, and that equals 2. So dividing both the numerator and denominator by 4 converts or changes our answer to simplest form. Now you have solved the equation. So for number 3, what if you have mixed numbers? Well, it's really no different. So you have 7 5/8 minus 4 and 1/8. So you're going to start by subtracting the whole numbers first. So I just took the 7 from this mixed number, the 4 from this mixed number, and brought them down here to subtract. So 7 minus 4 equals 3. Then you're going to subtract the numerators of the fraction. Same as number 2, the example 2 that you just saw on the last page. So 5/8 minus 1/8 equals 4/8. Don't forget to simplify your fraction. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So your final answer combines the whole number and the fraction together. So 7 5/8 minus 4 1/8 equals 3, like we had up here. 3 and 4/8. And then when you simplify 4/8, you get 1/2. So your final answer is 3 and 1/2. Example 4. What about subtracting improper fractions? Well, you see we have 25 fifths, so our numerator is greater than our denominator. That's what makes it improper. So 25 fifths minus 10 fifths. Well, first of all, do we have like denominators? Yes. Second, is my first numerator greater than my second numerator? Well, 25 is greater than 10, so I can solve this subtraction problem. Well, 25 minus 10 equals 15. So we have 15 fifths. Now, but how are you going to simplify this fraction? Remember, fractions are division equations. They just look different. Therefore, you can read your answer as 15 divided by 5. How many times can 5 go into 15? Or you can think about it this way. 5 times what number equals 15? And if you said 3, you are correct. So take your 15, put it inside your division symbol. Take your 5, goes out here, and 5 goes into 15 how many times? 3 times. Minus 15, 0. So your answer is 3. Or you could remember, multiplication is the opposite of division. So you're saying 5 times what number equals 15? And that would be 3. Okay, again at this point, for my 4th graders, if you would like to stop the video at this point, you can. Or you can continue watching and see how we subtract fractions with unlike denominators and get a little head start for your 5th grade year. So part 2, subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. When subtracting fractions with unlike denominators, you must check for 2 things. So first, you're going to make sure your denominators match before you can solve the problem. You can make your denominators match by finding the least or smallest common multiple. And its abbreviation is LCM. And number 2, before you solve, make sure you are subtracting a smaller number from a larger number. So that means that larger number, that greater number, has to come first in your subtraction problem. All right. So for example, we have 2/4 minus 3/8. So when finding the least common multiple for your fractions, take a look at your smallest denominator. Then ask, can I multiply the smaller denominator by a number in order to make it equal to the larger denominator? In this case, you can. So I can take my smaller denominator, which is 4, and I'm saying, can I turn that into an 8? And I can when I multiply by 2. So 4 times 2 equals 8. Now, I want you to remember, whatever you do to your denominator, you must do the same thing to your numerator. So if you multiply your denominator by 2, you must also multiply your numerator by 2. This creates your equivalent fraction. So here you can see I have 2/4, and I want to see how can I turn it into a fraction with 8 as my denominator. Well, I can multiply 4 times 2, we saw that up here. So 4 times 2 is 8, and then whatever you do to your denominator, you have to do the same thing to your numerator to create an equivalent fraction. So therefore, I'm going to multiply my numerator 2 times 2, and I'll get 4 as my new numerator. So my new equivalent fraction for 2/4 is 4/8. Now, you can substitute your equivalent fraction, 4/8, into your original equation. Note that now your first numerator is larger than your second numerator. You can solve this equation. So you see, I have 4/8 minus 3/8. 4 minus 3 is 1. So my answer is 1/8. Now, is 1/8 in simplest form? Yes, it is. So you've solved your equation. Now, when subtracting mixed numbers with unlike denominators, you will want to follow the same steps as in number 1 of this section, but you can also convert your mixed numbers to improper fractions to solve the equation. So, for example, you have the problem 2 2/4 minus 2 3/8, and we want to know what that answer is. So first, we're going to convert each mixed number to an improper fraction. And here's how we do that. So whenever you're converting a mixed number to an improper fraction, what you're doing is you're going to take and multiply your denominator times your whole number, and then the product you get from multiplying those two numbers, whatever that is, you will add it to the numerator in your mixed number. So we have 4 times 2, which would be 8. So I'm going to put a little 8 in my circle, and then we would add 2 more to that. Now I showed this to you, again, like I've been doing my equations. I'm showing you what that expression would look like. So you can say 4, and this 4, that's your denominator. I'm going to write this up here. So that's your denominator. Okay? And this 2 is your whole number. And finally, this 2 is your numerator. Okay? Now, what is 4 times 2? Well, that's 8. And then we're going to add the 2. And so your improper fraction becomes 10/4. You're going to do the same thing down here with your other mixed number, 2 3/8. So you're going to say 8 times 2 plus 3 equals 16 plus 3/8 equals 19/8. So there's your improper fraction for your other mixed number. Now you're going to rewrite your equation using the improper fractions. So now you have 10/4, which was from the first mixed number, and 19/8, which is from the second mixed number. Okay, so we have two issues at this point. Number one, I can't subtract 19 from 10. If I have $10, I cannot pay you $19. I can't take 19 out of 10. Second problem is I don't have common denominators. I have a 4 in this fraction and I have an 8 in this fraction. I can't subtract if I don't have common denominators. At this point, you will find your least common multiple and create an equivalent fraction for 10/4. Because remember, I can turn that 4 into an 8. So, you can still multiply the smaller number by another number in order to make it equal to the larger denominator. So 4 times 2 is 8. And as before, whatever you do to your denominator, you must do the same thing to your numerator. So if you multiply your denominator by 2, you must also multiply your numerator by 2. This creates your equivalent fraction. So we're going from 10/4 to something over 8. Now, I'm going to multiply 4 times 2, because we said 4 times 2 makes that denominator 8. So now I have to multiply my numerator by 2 as well, which means my new fraction is 20/8. So now you can substitute your equivalent fraction, 20/8, into your improper fraction equation. Note that now your first numerator is larger than your second numerator. You can now solve this equation. So as you can see, instead of 10/4, I replaced that 10/4 with 20/8. I still kept my 19/8 because I didn't change that improper fraction. It remained the same. And now I can subtract, because can I solve this problem? 20 minus 19? Yes, I could solve that problem, and it would be 1. And of course, as before, your denominator stays the same throughout the process of solving the equation. So your 8 remains an 8. Now, is 1/8 in simplest form? It is. So you've solved your equation. Now, I want you to note something. If the answer to an equation is still an improper fraction, it's okay. At that point, convert or change your answer to a mixed number. Remember, a fraction is a division equation. It just looks different. So for example, let's say you get 25/8 as your answer to an equation. Read your answer as 25 divided by 8. Well, now you can ask yourself, how many times, there's that word times, can 8 go into 25? Or 8 times what number equals 25? Well, we know that 8 times 3 is 24. So we have 3 whole groups of 8. We'll need to now add 1/8 more to get to 25/8. Therefore, our final answer is 3 and 1/8. And basically, what's happening is you're saying 8 times 3 plus 1. Now remember, from just a couple minutes ago, you just saw an equation that looked like this over a denominator. And this was your denominator. This, I'm just put a D for denominator. This was your whole number. And this was your numerator. So your whole number is 3. 8 is your denominator. There it is. And your numerator is 1. So 3 and 1/8. All right. So from this point forward, you have all the tools you need to solve any fraction subtraction equation. Try some on your own. You can do this. Good luck.